Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis, and I'm here with my co-host Gail Burke, and we've got a number of issues to talk about today. But the first issue is my hat. Okay, now I was with a customer yesterday, and she had these hats, and I asked her about it. And as you can see, it says, stand for it, respect it. The genesis of this was very simple. Her husband works for the sheriff's department. And when professional football players were kneeling down during the Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem, he got cranky. Yeah, like me. I got cranky, he got cranky. Okay, so he stopped watching professional football altogether. Hasn't watched the game since. And he came up with this idea. She's an embroiderer. They came up with the idea of this hat, and they've sold a ton of these hats. I commented on it. Now I have one of these hats. You know, the question you have to ask yourself, whether it's professional football, baseball, hockey, soccer, take whatever sport you want, basketball, where can anybody, I don't care whether you're black, white, Asian, where can anybody get a job to make that kind of money and anywhere in the world but the United States? And aren't we providing, we meaning the United States, aren't we giving people that opportunity? So to kneel down on the Star-Spangled Banner and say this country is unfair, I don't get it. Not only don't I get it, but there's a reason why so many illegals, not undocumented, illegals want to come into this country. They don't want to come into this country because it's a terrible place to be. They want to come into this country because it's a good place to be. So to kneel down doesn't make sense to me. Also, when you look, and we've talked about this before, Gail, on the show, when you look at what happened to the United States, okay, first of all, we had slavery. Yes, we had slavery. But guess what? We saw the problem, we solved the problem. Then women couldn't vote. Maybe they shouldn't, I don't know, that's up to you. But
Careful.
The bottom line is, women couldn't vote, we saw the problem, we solved the problem. We have the Civil Rights Act. We saw a problem, we solved the problem. This country evolves. And that's what makes this country as great as it is today, because of the evolution. We see a problem, we solve a problem. So, are we perfect? Nobody's perfect. But we certainly are the best country in the world, and we deserve respect, and that's why I'm wearing this hat. Gail?
I agree with you. Yes, we are a wonderful country, but unfortunately, we now have a president who is tearing it apart. We know that we have trouble with the prices of oil, of gasoline, it's going to be heating oil when the wintertime comes, food, you name it. Prices are going up on everything. And yet, this president has told us in no uncertain terms he's doing everything he can to alleviate the problems. Well, I don't think Joey's telling the truth. There was a report.
Don't tell me Joe's lying, because the only liar that I've ever heard of in office was Trump. Okay?
Yeah.
So don't tell me, you're hurting me.
Sorry about that. Because he and his whole administration do not tell the truth. Biden sold nearly 1 million barrels from our U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve to who? To the Chinese Communist Party-owned oil company linked to the Hunter Biden firm. If you can imagine anything more obscene than that, not only is he not telling us the truth, he's not lifting a finger to solve the problem that he caused. It wasn't caused by Vladimir Putin or the war in Ukraine. It started before Putin invaded Ukraine. So don't use that as a scapegoat.
Gail, it started the day he came into office when he stopped the pipeline.
Right, that's true. In April, the Department of Energy announced the nearly 1 million barrel sale to Unipec, which is the trading arm of Sinopec, or Sinopec, is wholly owned and operated by the Chinese Communist Party. So he's selling our oil reserves, which are starting to get very low. He's selling them to the Chinese Communist Party, and in the meantime, he's begging, and I mean begging, Venezuela and Saudi Arabia to sell us their oil instead of allowing us to use our own oil, which we have more oil in the ground than we could use up in 200 to 300 years. But he will not allow the drilling. He won't allow the fracking. He canceled the pipeline, and now he's telling us he's doing everything he can to alleviate the problem. Sorry, Joe, it doesn't go. It's not the truth. And it's about time the media started to really get on track with this and start to publish what these lies are. And until they do, you have NPR and you have CNN going right around it. They're not saying much of anything. And when they do, it's always to back up this administration.
And also, Gail, he's pointing to the fact that some of the gas stations are charging too much money. Now, you have to understand, gas stations are in business to make money, okay? That's part of the free enterprise system. If you bought, say, 2,000 gallons of gas at $3 a gallon and sold them, for argument's sake, at $3.50 a gallon, then your next order comes in at $4 a gallon, you've got to go up in price and you've got to make some money to pay for that, number one. Number two is, because the Democrats are in favor of $15 an hour minimum wage. Part of the problem there is a $15 minimum wage costs the employer roughly around $25 an hour.
It limits the number of employees that he can hire.
It limits the, so if it's costing a gas station $25 an hour for an employee, you got to make money on the gas. I mean, let me ask you this question. Is it justified that a lawyer gets $500 or $600 an hour? You want to talk about abusing the public. Lawyers abuse the public. But, I mean, give a gas station guy a break. They got to make money. It's not them that's the problem. It's the Biden that's the problem. It's the liberals that are the problem. And as Gail said, we've got plenty of oil, and we are, as I said earlier, evolving, and we're starting with electric cars, and we're starting with cars that get a lot more miles per gallon. Do you realize how important oil is to our economy?
Everything.
Pavement for the roads made with petroleum.
That's right.
You know, you
Our
want
whole-
good
our whole
roads,
society
we got to have,
needs it.
you know, and so if we're buying from Venezuela, which, by the way, has the dirtiest oil in the world, and if we're buying from the Arabs, which has fairly dirty oil, the United States, when we drill for oil, we are the cleanest in the world. So why is it better to get dirty oil from another country than getting the clean oil from our country? I don't understand that, because, you know, when you're talking the environment is worldwide. And if we're the only country doing something to help the environment, not enough. Not enough at all. We got to work towards everybody helping out. But for us to buy oil from Venezuela and then sell our oil to the Chinese,
Something wrong with this
where does
picture.
this make sense? But I'll bet you the Biden family income is doing pretty well.
Yep. Well, that brings us kind of into the Green New Deal and the environmental activists who keep telling us we have to eliminate our carbon footprint by 2030, 2050. I think it's 2030 now. And we have to take a look at what's happening around the world because Germany tried doing that. They shut down their nuclear power plants. They got rid of everything, and they were using wind and solar. Well, what happened in Germany? There's too little wind in the first half of 2021.
Politicians weren't talking?
Yeah, that's right. So there was too little wind. Solar, in the wintertime, there's not that much sun. So you can't just depend on those two kinds of energy. It doesn't work. It's not going to work anywhere it's been tried because there's too little of it and it's not a constant. And what happens, like in California, what happened with them, it's going to happen again, and it will probably happen to us too. We're going to have brownouts and blackouts. Those are times when there is no electricity because everybody's trying to use it. What happens with your electric cars? You purchase an electric car for, say, $60,000, and you're faced with a blackout or a brownout, say in the summertime when everybody's using their AC, or in the wintertime when everybody's using their heating systems. How do you charge your car up? You don't. You have to wait until it comes back online again. That's a crazy thing to do when we're sitting on all of this oil and coal. And we have, through innovation over the years, our coal is clean. Our oil can be refined by our refineries that keep it clean. Biden tells us, well, we told them they could go ahead with the oil. We told them that we could give them their permits. Well, the only problem is there are all kinds of restrictions on those permits. So why should businessmen, oil men, who want to make a profit because they are businessmen, they're not going to say, okay, we're going to jump in, we're going to explore for more oil, we're going to use our equipment, when he's telling them, on the other hand, we're going to get rid of all of our fossil fuels. That doesn't make any sense.
You know, it's what you say is true, but also what Biden has been saying lately is the oil companies are making more money now than they ever did. And I'm going to say to you, what's the harm? And I'll tell you why I say that. Number one, if you're in the stock market and you have some stocks with Exxon or BP or whatever, you're making money. Isn't that what companies are supposed to do? Isn't that why you're in the stock market, to make money? They're a business. But there's been plenty of years when oil companies haven't made a lot of money. But you know what they do, even when they're not making a lot of money? They're doing research and development. And you know, that research is what makes the oil cleaner. It makes it burn better. They're safer when they bring the oil up. This research that they do is critical. It costs money to have research, and you got to pay people. So what's the harm in them making money?
There isn't any.
I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, talk about the cars for a second, the electric cars. You know that electric cars weigh about 1,000 pounds more than a regular car because the batteries are so heavy? You know what that extra 1,000 pounds does? It eats up the roads. And if we don't have any petroleum, we're not going to be able to fix the roads.
Well, not only that, but you know what they make the batteries out of? Fossil fuels go into it. Rare fossil fuels. Where do they come from? China.
China and also Ukraine, believe it or not.
That's right.
They come from
Yep.
Ukraine and China.
Yep.
So, everything is together. It's a cyclical kind of a thing, and it's not just one side of a story. The politicians are going to tell you what they want you to hear because they want your vote. They're buying your vote.
And they don't think that you're intelligent enough to look beyond it and see what the truth is. I had a story on the internet from Euro Weekly News. They're talking about what's happening in the Netherlands. Dutch farmers have been mandated that they have to get rid of their nitrogen oxide and ammonia. Do you know what that comes from? Cows. So the government is telling them they better reduce their livestock numbers or they're going to be shut down. Well, the people in Holland, the farmers especially, are not going to take it lying down. And they've taken to protesting. They get on their tractors and their farm equipment and they drive them into the cities. And they're protesting, as well they should, because the government, like our government, is trying to shut down business. Our farmers are going to be in the same position because they can't afford to use the fertilizer they need to grow farm products, to grow wheat or whatever else they grow on their farms. It's too expensive. The price of driving their vehicles is too expensive. These are small farmers. I'm not talking about the the big companies and the people like Bill Gates that own a lot of farmland. Not them. I'm talking about the small farmer. Whatever state they're in, it's happening to them. And they're up against a brick wall because they don't have any recourse except to try and grow their crops without the kind of fertilizer it takes. And it's not happening very well. I mean, we're going to feel the effects of it when we can't go to the store and buy the bread that we're used to having in abundance. And all the other products that the farmers provide, the fruits and vegetables.
It goes to what I've said all along on this show and previous shows. The woke people, the liberal people, the Democrats, don't understand the consequences of their actions. But what they're doing with the farmers means that the crops are going to be more expensive and we're going to be less able to buy them. So then we're going to have more hunger in the world.
And guess what?
And more famine in the world.
These farmers are also protesting. They have something in common with the United States. The press is not reporting as well as they should. So it's not just in this country where the press is not doing its job. It's in Europe as well. And if you don't have press coverage, you have to depend on the internet. And that's what they've been doing.
It's been brutal.
It's terrible.
Switching topics for just a second.
Sure.
There was a case the other day that somebody came in and robbed a convenience store.
Oh, in New York City, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the person working at the convenience store, I think he was the owner, approached the guy, had a fight with him, and actually killed him. Okay? And he got put in jail. And he got put in jail because he killed a guy that was trying to rob him, and that was in self-defense. So he gets put in jail. People set up a GoFundMe page for him, and GoFundMe took it down.
Well, don't forget to mention that this was a 62-year-old man who had immigrated here from I think it was Central America, Honduras, Guatemala, one of those countries. And this was midnight in the store. A young woman came in she wanted to buy some potato chips. So she handed him her welfare card, and he put it in the machine and said, "I'm sorry, you don't have any money left on it." The young woman got angry. She went outside and got her boyfriend, who was in his 20s, big strapping guy, who came in and started beating on this 62-year-old man. And the man had no recourse. What was he supposed to do? Let him beat him to death? So he had a knife. He took the knife out and he stabbed him. Why is he in Rikers?
Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense, but of course, New York,
Yeah.
Los Angeles,
Yeah.
they seem to like the idea that criminals are taking over the world.
Well, you're not supposed to protect yourself.
No, you can't. As a matter of fact, you remember the Rittenhouse case?
Yeah.
Okay. In the Rittenhouse case, the lawyer for the government said to the jury that because Rittenhouse had a gun and protecting property, when the guy trying to destroy the property didn't have a gun, Rittenhouse had no right to use it. In other words, he had no right to defend the property or himself.
Well, don't forget.
What kind of people would say that? I mean, if you attacked that lawyer, he'd pull a gun on you.
But don't forget, with Kyle Rittenhouse, there were 3 men after him. One of them hit him over the head with a skateboard.
Yeah.
The other one did have a gun. One of
But-
them did have a gun.
What is this woke people coming to? Then you got a case. Now, I just want to be a little cranky, I guess. Biden, again, he wants to pay people's college tuition. Well, first of all, you have a choice of which college to go to. You don't have to go to a $60,000, $70,000 a year college. But if you do, you got to pay for it. Okay? Now, granted, that's a lot of money for an education. And granted, these schools that are charging you that kind of money are liberal schools, and they have endowments that they could give everybody in the school free education and not have to worry about a thing for thousands of years. But that being said, why should you and I pay for somebody else's kid to go to college? First of all, when you give somebody something, they don't appreciate it. If they earn it, they appreciate it. And that's something, again, that the liberals don't understand. You need to teach people how to fish. You don't need to give them a fish every day. Gail?
Okay, well, we have the midterms are coming up, and the Democrats are getting scared. They're getting desperate because the polls are showing that many Hispanics are now going over to the Republican Party because they don't like what the Democrats are doing. And this has been a huge base for the Democrats, and they're losing it. And they don't like it one single bit. So that's why they come down hard on some blacks, especially, that are now Republican. I can think of one very famous Republican man, Clarence Thomas. They are dumping all over him. They want him to resign. And they're bringing up all kinds of excuses, what his wife does. He shouldn't do that. He's responsible for many rulings of the Supreme Court that the Democrats disagree with, especially Roe v. Wade. Well, Clarence Thomas didn't write the opinion. It was Sam Alito who wrote it, but Clarence Thomas is taking the brunt of it. And, of course, we know that what the Democrats are telling you about Roe v. Wade, a lot of lies. They're trying to scare people again. So I think that when you start to look at the record of what the Democrats have done since January of 2021, there's not a whole lot of good things that happened. Biden and company have been a disaster former people who worked in the government, whether they be politicians or whether they were part of other people's cabinets, are holding their heads. Even the Democrats, they can't believe how bad he is. And it's as one of Obama's famous supporters said, the chickens have come home to roost. Well, that's what's going to happen, hopefully, big time in November on Election Day.
You know, what's interesting, too, is that this country was built on the idea of free speech, free expression. Politics is the art of compromise. But at least according to the liberals, and I'm sure there are some conservatives the same way, but they don't listen to each other. They fight with each other. It's my way or the highway. And, you know, sometimes you have to, you know, the old he said, she said type of a scenario. He said this, she said this. Somewhere in the middle is the truth. Well, you know what you need to do? You listen to one side, you listen to the other side, and then you talk to each other, and maybe you can compromise. And if nobody is really happy, but it's acceptable, then you know what? You've got a winner. But we're not compromising now.
Yeah.
What we're doing is it's my way or the highway, and everybody else is no good. And that, I mean, I understand, for instance, a lot of people didn't like Donald Trump. And they didn't like him because he was kind of a big mouth. He sent some nasty tweets. I understand that.
That was
Look
his
at the
way.
policies.
Yeah.
Look at the policies.
what he
You're not
accomplished.
voting for anything but policies. And if you look at what we have right now, it's open borders, it's crime, it's more drugs that are killing our people, by the way. The fentanyl is killing our people, but the woke people say that's okay.
Well, we're going to have to end on that note because time is almost up. We hope we've covered a number of subjects that you were interested in. We know that the American public is interested in things that the Biden administration and the Democrats don't want to talk about. We've given you a few of them. You can look it up. Look up these subjects.
Email.
Inform yourself. Please inform yourself. Get the truth.
And email us.
And email us, absolutely. The emails will flash on the screen when we close. So thank you for watching. We've enjoyed it. We always enjoy our shows, and we hope you do too. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.